All right, everyone, welcome back to Psych Word. You are now on the couch with Rob Gerard, and on the line right now we have Susan Winter, relationship expert. Susan, you there?
I sure am. How are you?
Doing well. How you doing? Thanks for coming on. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you. Love it.
So, Susan, we're talking about relationships, and we were talking about your book, Allowing Magnificence. And let me tell you, Denise is a huge fan of yours, and she loves the book, and she raves about you.
Hi, Susan. So cool. Hey, Denise, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We really appreciate it. I am very excited. We have so many great questions that we're going to ask that I know our listeners are really going to benefit from.
Absolutely. Well, I'm in your hands. Anything I can do. Because I think you want to talk about healthy relationships, correct?
Well, Susan, let me just get one thing out real quick, okay? You love a younger guy. Am I right in saying that?
Oh, I've loved more than one. Yes, I love younger men in general. I do.
And why is that? What is it about younger men that really just get you going?
I think it's the open-mindedness. It's the generational difference. You know, several generations younger than myself, they're the recipients of an advanced psychology. You know, all that we've learned and all the mistakes we made, and we pass on through writing and therapy and television shows or whatever. We leave our message, and the younger people, they get it, have a more holistic view of life. Younger men are more emotionally, intellectually aware, I think, than anything else. And I love the newness of life. I love the beginning of the blank slate where all of life is beautiful and wonderful and everything is possible. You know, oftentimes as we age, we have baggage, we have challenges that we didn't know how to handle, and things weigh us down. We become negative, pessimistic, don't believe in love anymore. Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to try. Why take a risk? I love the energy and the beauty of an open mind.
Now, have you had better sex with younger men or men your age?
Oh, you really want to know? I've never had sex with a man my age. I've never had sex with a man over about 39, so I cannot comment on what it's like to be with an older man. I am 60, so I can't. My husband was 23 years younger, so I don't really know. I don't have anything to compare it with. I hear that older men are better in bed, but I think it's a rumor, and I think it was started by older men. I don't think, you know, I'm not really sure, but when I'm 80, and I sleep with a 50-year-old, I'll let you know, okay?
So, Susan, talking about the whole relationship and dating younger men, this started for you in a time where it really was not acceptable, right? It really wasn't socially acceptable for women, accomplished will. First of all, it wasn't common for women to have career success. And then second,
right.
You're now in an equation where you want to live your life the way that you want to. You choose to date younger men, and you're put in a situation where almost you have to answer for your choices. Tell me a little bit, tell us and the listeners a little bit more about that experience.
This is not something that I wished upon myself. I lived with a same-aged partner when I first came to New York. I was an opera singer, which is why I moved to New York. And we lived together. I met him at 26. He was 27. We lived together 10 years. It wasn't bad. It wasn't stellar. He was in love with me. I wasn't in love with him. I didn't have that special feeling, but he was good to me. I admired him. I didn't know what I was missing. It was a nice relationship with a nice man. And all I did was go to a client's wedding reception in Vermont, and a young man kept asking me to dance. I was then 37. I think he was 22. I don't know what happened. He kept asking me to dance, and it's like the electric grid went on in the Northeast. Suddenly, I woke up. Just the way he looked at me and the way he held my hand, and I thought he was being nice to me. So I didn't plan this. But when I was in the midst of the experience, at the apex of the mountain where it's a yes or a no, I remember thinking, I may never, ever have this opportunity to feel this way again, and I knew it would cost me big time, and I took the leap. Now, when I took the leap, I didn't foresee in 2 generations of my life the outcome where I'd be standing today. I didn't realize that was the door that opened up my greater soul purpose. I didn't realize it would change my career. I was pretty clear it would change my life. And the thing that was so radical about my experience was I never looked at these men as toys. They, to me, were younger, but the relationship material that I loved. It wasn't a fling. I don't do that. I've never been able to do that. So what was so controversial for me when I came out with Older Women, Younger Men in 2000, the reason the media was all upset was because, you know, they could wrap their head around, you know, I had sex with a pool boy or the tennis pro. They couldn't wrap their head around with, I'm in love with a man 20 years younger, we live together, and we're in a committed relationship. So that lack of justice was hard for me because women were breaking through all sorts of barriers in their own consciousness, giving themselves permission to work outside the home, giving themselves permission to have equal rights. You know, you can have equal rights as far as legislation long before you're free within your mind to take that liberation. So I don't look at older women and younger men or having a younger male partner as, wow, this is about sex, I'm so hot. I look at it as one more affirmation that women are allowed to have a grand amount of options that men have had for centuries. Should they care to make that choice? It's not for everyone. I'm not here as a proponent to say this is the way to go. It worked for me. I liked it. It worked for my partners. They seem to like it. It's a preference. I'm not excluding a man my age or a man who would be older, but I have a preference. And that's where I stand on it today.
You know, one of the things that you talk about that sparks a lot of interest is you stand for, I'm meaning referencing to you, that you were not one to have flings, that the relationships that you have had and still continue to have in your life, are of substance. So, you know, being out in the dating world, being a modern woman, and, you know, even male or female, what do you recommend? Like, how do you form those relationships? What do you find that you're doing differently than someone else who may just be going from relationship to relationship? How are you developing those deep connections and allowing yourself to have these long-term relationships?
Oh, that's such a great question. First of all, I think it's dispositional. I really wanted to not be me. It would have been so much more convenient if I could have taken a lover and gone off and had a pedicure and never thought about it. I'm kind of a complete package. I don't know how to merge physically and cut off my soul or my heart. If I like you well enough to get to the point that I'm intimate with you, that means I want you in my life completely. As a person, it's not like, oh, I care for you. Now I don't want to ever know you. So I enter going for the complete experience as I look for a deeper connection. To me, that makes it more meaningful. I do not know how to segment my physical life, throw my body in a bed, and separate my emotions, my head, my heart. I don't know how to do it. Maybe it's a lack of that skill, but I have had to understand that this is how I'm designed. And when I'm dating, I tell people straight up who I am. I would rather they run, you know, as we're meeting for coffee and not be surprised with something a year later. I think that we need to know who we are, Denise. We need to be very clear on what we can and cannot do. And sometimes that changes in different parts of our life. Maybe there's a lady who gets divorced and she hasn't been with another man, and now she wants to know what that's like. It may not be her forever stance, but it may be a time that works for her. Wherever you are in any given moment of your life, check in with yourself and say, you know, am I in the fullness of how I want to express myself? Is this who I want to be? And I would suggest never conforming to what is popular in society simply because it is the trend.
So be your true, authentic self.
It's the only way to get to a real relationship.
Yeah.
Real gets real, game gets game. And if you do the revolving door of sex, you're going to get really tired and discontent. Like all the poor millennials out there. They get a 3-month run with a guy before he dumps them. You know, so they're guarding their heart. So every time we get hurt, the wall goes up, and that's one more tier we have to tear down. And it's a lot easier. It's a very simple equation. I would suggest people dating to look for someone who want what you want, and they want it with you.
So no having to do extra work in the relationship. Both people are on the same ground. Both people do not have to tear down the walls because you're both equally in it, and that's where you want to go with the relationship. Can I ask you, what would be your suggestion for the listeners out there who are young and single? You know, Valentine's Day is coming up. What would be some suggestions about ways to meet quality people?
Oh, right before Valentine's Day? Well, see, I'm a big proponent of keeping your eyes open when you're about in your day-to-day life. I think so many times we're busy going from point A to point B that we're not even conscious of the guy standing in the aisle buying toothpaste next to us, because we've become accustomed to, oh, no, I can only meet guys online. And the same is true with men. I know a dear friend of mine picked up his wife in a Duane Reade drugstore, which is Walgreens, and he just started chatting with her in line. He also used to use the grocery store. So I'm a big proponent of also utilizing your day-to-day life errands and what you're doing to meet people in real time and face-to-face. Certainly online dating is very common. Most people do that. And again, I think that's more of a training curve for the people who are doing it. It's an animal unto itself. And if you're in it long enough, you start to learn the signs. Who's a flake, who just wants sex, who's actually connecting with you. So you go through a few ups and downs that way. I don't know that you can find somebody right before Valentine's Day, but if you're alone, give yourself a Valentine's date. Make sure that you do something nice for yourself and be your own best friend.
Beautiful. I love it. Love yourself, right? Sometimes that saying is love yourself.
Don't wait for somebody to buy you flowers, and don't bemoan the fact that, oh my goodness, I'm alone. The whole world is partnered. Half the world is not partnered. So go buy yourself some flowers, and don't feel like you're a loser because you do it. In honoring yourself, it's kind of like you put a little bit of money into the bank, and so you're feeling good about yourself is the best platform to then meet somebody else who sees what you see in yourself.
I'm constantly telling Denise, you're not a loser because you're single. You're not a loser. I tell her it's like a mantra. You just kind of have to repeat it. But I have a question for you. Now, moving on from Younger Men and Cougars, the first book that you had, Older Women, Younger Men. Moving on from that, you say in your book, Allowing Magnificence, living the life you desire is the act of reconnecting to the limitless power you already possess. What do you mean by this power you already possess?
Okay, so we come into the world like a blank slate, knowing, but we are a knowing creature. You know, when we're little, we're hungry, we know we're hungry, and we cry. But we get socialized. It's a part of life. It has to happen, otherwise we'd be running feral. So we learn to have correct behavior. So what happens is slowly we start to amend our behavior according to our world, and we repress a lot of our emotions. We disconnect from ourselves. We learn to be overly polite. We may learn to be codependent. We may learn to be subservient. We may learn to acquiesce. We get further and further from our truth. So what happens is when you have multiple layers of how you should be that have been foisted upon you by your society, and you've never taken a moment to peel back those layers and say, who am I really? What do I really love? What job do I really want to do? Do I want to be married or don't I want to be married? Do I want children or don't I want children? And you're always free to change your mind, but if you're willing to accept who you are right now in that present state and get on board with yourself and agree with yourself, you're going to find that you grow much more effectively and authentically, these deep roots inside yourself, where you're a much more vibrant and empowered person, because we're never empowered when we're trying to show up as what somebody wants us to be, whether it's on a date or a job interview or in life. When we start to be okay with who we are, constantly wanting to improve it, but being aware of, like me, I don't love to go to clubs and discotheques and bars and things. It's not, it's not fashionable to be more private. It's not fashionable to necessarily want to just have intimate dinners with friends and meaningful conversation. I've made peace with it. That's who I am. I prefer that. That's my normal. That's good for me. And if you like that too, then we might be playmates. Then maybe we have something in common. But I've gotten very clear on what I like and what I don't like, and the only way I could do that was start to check in. You know, we're under such a social kind of a hypnosis to be a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, want a certain thing. And we get far off of our truth. And when you live in your own truth, you're automatically powerful.
You make such a great point with that, and you talk about that actually in your book, and I know it's the chapter that talks about the process of personal evolution and self-awareness. And I mean, this book, as you're aware, I've read the book. So to all the listeners out there, again, you're listening to Susan Winter, New York City relationship expert and life expert. And she actually just came out with a book called Allowing Magnificence. It's something that I highly recommend. I've read it myself. A lot of excellent advice in here about personal evolution, awareness. I know even there's some personal thoughts in here, Susan, where you actually talk about your relationship with your mother, which I found very touching. And I think a lot of listeners can connect with that particular chapter about life and just, you know, life in general, and about being, you know, I really look at you as an example or a role model to any person, male or female, that accepts themselves and really has the courage to stand up and do the things that they believe in. Because it's one thing to talk about what you want to do or who you want to be. It's another thing to actually take the action and to be that person. So, you know, if you...
Denise, thank you. It does take courage. It takes courage to have a different voice. No different than what we're trying to do now with kids in high school, to tell them to speak up if they see bullying. It takes courage to be the one to say, no, I don't think that's right. It takes courage to be the one lone voice. But when you're living in your truth, whatever that truth is, and again, it evolves. I'm not the same person I was last year. I'm not the same person I was 2 days ago. You know, if we're allowing ourselves to evolve in life, we will get new input, and new input creates a new output. So, but you become comfortable. It's kind of like one is a scripted role that you say all the time and keep to that character, and the other is where you're free enough to improvise with life. That means you're flexible. You trust yourself enough to have an answer spontaneously. You're living life authentically. And the thing is that the root of most people's discontent and unhappiness is that they're really not living their life. They're living a life that they think is a successful life. They're in a relationship that maybe looks good but doesn't feel good. So when we get off, to answer your question, you know, there is no power. When you're off your truth, you're not hooked into your power.
So going back to what you said earlier today, best advice for our listeners out there in relationships and looking to live a fuller life, a more quality life, be your true authentic self and live your truth. This is Susan Winter that we're listening to, New York City relationship expert. Susan, just as we're wrapping up, if you could tell the listeners, how can they find you? Where can our listeners find more advice, more of your knowledgeable advice?
Oh, I love that. Please come to my website, susanwinter.net, N-E-T. Also, I have an author Susan Winter page I love on Facebook, and I love it when people connect with me. And I know you, Denise, through Facebook. This is so cool how social media, I can bring people in closer and closer and closer and actually get to know them. And I love that aspect of it. I don't want people to just read my stuff and I put it on a page. I want to know you. I want to help you. And that makes my life richer. I'd love to do that. I have a lot of videos, podcasts, recordings. I work with men and women. You know, it's a universal thing. We're all here learning, trying to find the best way for us. Life is not here to victimize us. It's really trying to assist us. We have to understand that every little challenge is really trying to lead us to something better.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Susan Winter, relationship expert. Thank you very much for appearing on Psych, where we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Susan.
Oh, my great pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm honored. Love this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
All right. Susan Winter, relationship expert. That was great. That was great having her on.
She is just phenomenal. I mean, it's a lot of times people often say, hey, well, that's just basic, common sense, be yourself. But you know how hard it is to date and be yourself? I mean, listen, coming from someone who knows I am almost like what do you call it? I don't want to say I'm like some type of villain dater or something, but I'm not quite sure, but I can say I've had a lot of experiences, and it's a very interesting world out there. And it's kind of hard to be yourself sometimes.
Your last boyfriend was a sidekick villain in Gotham City.
Yeah, I'm really sad I got rid of him. I had some pretty good connections with him.
Yeah, it was the Joker's main sidekick, Bob, right?
Very funny, you guys.
So, all right, guys. So we are wrapping up yet another episode of Psych Word. Check us out on psychword.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. You can listen to us on iTunes.
iTunes, the way to go when you're working.